We've got Mike Mortlock with us today. He's a leader in the tax depreciation and quantity surveying industry in Australia. Mike has worked with top tier firms like McDonald's, Stockland's, Hilton Hotels, delivering comprehensive depreciation schedules across various property types. Schedules or schedules, Mike?
Oh, it depends where you live and how plummy your mouth is. Actually, I've worked out. So you can choose your own adventure there, mate.
Thanks for joining us today, Mike. Really good. I've been on your podcast previously a few times actually, and we've done a whole bunch of videos throughout the years talking about property, talking about depreciation, and so forth. Today, I want to really dive deep into the whole idea about business. I think it's an important one for people to realize, and we often do hear that narrative that 90% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. So, I want to get your ideas and thoughts around business.
Mm. Well, I think traditionally my idea of your stereotypical business is it starts with a technician, someone who's actually good at a specific task. So let's say you're an electrician or you're a hairdresser or a dog groomer or a quantity surveyor like me. It starts with that base skill where you realise that somebody is willing to swap me money for me to do what I do. But then the interesting thing is that just because you're good at that skill doesn't mean you're actually good at running a business. And I would put myself in that category. I wouldn't say that I'm a natural entrepreneur. I wouldn't say I'm a gifted business person, but gosh, I had to figure it out in a hurry. And I think the people that maybe don't figure that out, or they just focus too much on the area of expertise and then they let the business get away from them, that I think relates to some of those statistics. And I was talking to an accountant yesterday, and I think that there are just some times where people just throw the absolute kitchen sink at an untested idea. Think about starting a shop that might be selling candles or beads or low sort of value products. They get a shop front, they're committed to a $40,000-$50,000 a year lease, they get a sign written Tesla, and you just kind of see that sort of stuff and go, oh gosh, that makes me nervous.
So, Mike, you told us about the early days and how you were the technician, but what's the single biggest challenge that you are currently facing in business, and how are you addressing it?
I suppose the early days, I never intended to start my own business, but I think with a lot of people I have in common, perhaps the fact that I got to a certain point and couldn't see a pathway, didn't feel alignment with the place that I was working, and that kind of made the risk reward ratio shift a little bit, because when you're thinking about going out into the world and doing your own thing, there's really no safety net. And I think that is the exciting and the equal parts terrifying part about starting your own business. In terms of challenges, I've observed that they just depends on where you're at in the business. I mean, the first challenge was we need a customer, we need someone to pay us money for what we do, and then we need to over deliver on that, and we need to get a testimonial or some great feedback, and we need to tell that story. Then we need to reach out and build some connections with people, and then over time those challenges become very, very different as the business grows, especially in headcount. HR tends to be one of those challenges that dominates as well, and even to this day, if we look at the expenditure of our business, humans or human beings, or if you want to be ruthless, the term human capital came up about 10 years ago. That sounds a bit terrifying to me, because they are actually people. But if you think about any expenditure in your business, let's say you're spending 10% of your revenue on marketing, you would be drilling down to see what is the ROI on that. How do we optimize that? With people, we tend not to necessarily do that as well as we do other sort of outsourced expenses. So that is the big sort of low-hanging fruit for us and for other organizations, is that how do we engage these people? How do we maximize their output and their happiness and their job satisfaction, which relates to productivity, and get them on board with the mission that we're trying to achieve as an organization?
I guess it's the expectations of the workforce now, and individuals as well. And I guess what governments and these other bodies that are, telling us how we are supposed to be, looking after staff and how we are supposed to be doing things in business. So I guess there's a lot more pressures on employers these days. Do you feel that might be the case for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose someone that's maybe my age or older, can be sort of written off as a little bit grumpy, like, oh, the kids these days aren't prepared to put in the hard work. But there's certainly some truth to that fact where people aren't willing to graft. I mean, I was an absolute shit kicker for a period of time, and that was just the apprenticeship that you had to do. I suppose that stickiness that we had to employers maybe 20, 50 years ago doesn't quite exist anymore. So when you're getting someone in, you really need to say, look, this is what we do, this is what we're trying to achieve, this is how you can have an impact, and if you want progression or you want certain things, like, this is a pathway to get it. So it's a different mindset, a different challenge today than it was 20, 30, 50 years ago.
You touched on them previously being employed yourself, but what can you share with as a pivotal moment when you decided to leave that employment and become a business owner? What kind of like emotions and mindset was the shift, that experience for you?
It wasn't an individual moment or a Rubicon moment. It was probably, the straws piling up on my camel back, and just sort of got to the point where I felt that this was untenable. It was equal parts exciting. I at least had enough arrogance to think that I could do it better, but then also enough self-loathing to be petrified about what could go wrong and what failure looks like, which is a very, very motivating force. I mean, back in the early days, we had an accountant that would basically sort of encourage us to take as much money out of the business as we could, because then our backs are against the wall. It's almost like using that threat of cash flow potential problems to motivate you to get out there and kick bottom. And that can be a really good tool, a good motivating force, but you also don't want to be flying too close to the sun, because businesses can get into cash flow situations that are problematic very quickly. And I feel a very strong responsibility to the welfare and well-being, and the responsibilities that we have as business owners to employ someone and that job still be there for them tomorrow, the next month, the next year.
And what kind of niggles that, you mentioned about the niggles in employment, what kind of niggles sort of come up for you, or do you see coming up for other people who, want that drive to start their own business?
I think you've really got to go through an intense phase of self-reflection and understand your strengths and your weaknesses. So when people talk about, success in business, I feel like a lot of the predictors actually live within yourself, because we're all human beings that are affected by experience and trauma and things that motivate us that are different from each other. So you might be motivated by a chip on your shoulder, like, this person said I couldn't do it and I'm going to show them wrong. And that can be very powerful, but it only lasts for a certain amount of time. You could actually be really, really motivated by envy and just kind of be looking at someone and going like, why is it so easy for them? Like, I'm smarter, and all those sorts of things. And you can get in this loop where you're actually sort of getting in your own way. So I really think, like, the psychology of you as an individual has an impact on your business trajectory, and really can place a ceiling on what you're able to achieve.
Yeah, good points. Mike, how do you identify and evaluate emerging trends in your industry and stay ahead of the curve? And what part does AI play now and potentially in the future, you feel?
Emerging trends is a lot more time consuming today than it was maybe 10 years ago, because we've had this AI boom and AI explosion, and a lot of the pundits are saying that the impact of this will be 30 times the impact of the Industrial Revolution, which was absolutely massive, right? Going from an agricultural society to a production society where we had people living out on the farms producing things, moving into the cities for a central place of work, and driving efficiencies and standard of living and those sorts of things. So to think of that as being 30 times that impact is wild. But there's a lot of data out there that's saying things like 90% of AI implementation in small business actually fails. So there's a lot of hype, and you can go on YouTube and look at all of these YouTubers that are making $1 million in their first year by automating, YouTube Reels creation or building N8N workflows for business. And you have to sort of find a way to cut through that fluff and remove that hyperbole. But I really feel like anyone right now at the moment should be dedicating a reasonable amount of their time to understanding what's happening. And it's just not static either. I mean, the AI experts are always saying it'll never be as bad as it is today. And I think that's an important thing to keep in your mind. For example, I've tested some AI like phone answering and outreach things, and they just aren't human enough for me yet. And my customers and potential customers are far too important to feel like I'm just throwing a bot at them, because that doesn't really show a huge level of respect to them. So I wouldn't touch it right now. However, it's not going to be as bad as it is today tomorrow. So you actually do need to check in on that. So I really think you need to sort of dedicate a little bit of time, understand what AI is enabling for people, and consider how you can actually augment yourself, augment your humans and your workforce. I think that's the magic sauce for me. I think that there's going to be people that embrace AI to augment the human capability. I don't think AI is going to remove humans from a lot of industries, but it'll be a race between those who adopt the AI augmentation against those that don't.
Yeah, good points. It's a moving beast all the time, AI. So there's upgrades going in daily. So you pointed that out, and I think you're doing the right things by being involved, and that's where I see it going as well. But the technology isn't there to flow into business right now, but it is always improving, which I'm seeing. Mike, what are 3 actual items you would recommend business owners do in the next 90 days? I guess it might depend where they're at in the cycle, but on a level of where businesses are established, what can they do for themselves?
I think business can be relatively simple. You need to have an offer or something that solves a problem, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a problem, because you might sell a luxury item and no one actually has a problem that solves, but they have a desire and a want. So you need to think about that from that perspective. You should always be looking at your business in terms of, why are they coming to me? What's important? What problem am I solving? What feeling am I giving them? And it's not just the product itself. Let's just say you sell luxury handbags or something. It's the experience of the purchase as well. So every time you communicate with that customer, it's an opportunity to excite them and to wow them and to enamor them with your brand. So I would be making sure that you take a moment to forget the noise, turn off the inbox, set your phone to not disturb, or maybe do this after hours, but just think about who's coming to me, why are they coming to me, and how do I over deliver so that these are raving fans. That, I think, would be the first one, outside of understanding yourself, your strengths and weaknesses, and owning things that you're not good at, making sure you're not just doing the things that you like in the business, you're actually doing the things that move the needle. The other thing that I would suggest is knowing the numbers. The numbers are absolutely critical, and if you don't have a CRM or you don't have a database that's tracking this, you need to have that. And with vibe coding these days, if you do have a CRM or a database, it's very, very easy to set up dashboards. There's some programs that can do that for you. So you want to be looking at all of those metrics. How many inquiries have we got? What's our conversion rate? What can we change or split test to move those numbers? What sort of conversion rate do we need on our inquiry to hit our targets, and set those targets and just understand everything. So let's just say you are a plumbing business. Somebody sends a quote through your website. You want to be knowing how quickly on average do we respond to that, and what is our conversion rate. And if you have enough data, you can say, okay, well, our conversion rate goes up by 5% if we can respond within 30 minutes rather than 30 minutes or more. Just one example of the million different data points that I think move the needle. And people engagement, augmented humans and automation. I think that's a massive big category. We could do our own show just particularly on that. But you really need to think about, you've only got a certain amount of time each day, each week, each month. What are you doing with that time, and is it the highest and best use of your time? If you have an employee, let's just say an administration person or a receptionist, and you're doing a task that you can easily teach them to do, don't think of it as, you know, potential for efficiency. Think of it as you stealing from your business, because ostensibly that is kind of what you're doing. If you're not putting your absolute genius and your secret sauce in the right place, then you are stealing potential revenue from your business.
Finally, Mike, what is the legacy that you want MCG Quantity Surveying and yourself to build beyond financial success?
It's a big question, mate. You're famous for asking these "what's your why" type questions.
Marty loves it.
I know he does. As I age, I think I care a little bit less about legacy, but just more about helping people. I would like to be known as the sort of person that you can go to and get an answer to a question. And if it's a big chunk of work, I'll charge you for it. But if it's not, I'm actually there to help you. And I will be the sort of person to say, it is not worth you paying for me to solve this problem, because I can see the results are going to be within this band, and that's not a good deal for you. I would just like you to say, I contacted this guy, he had an opportunity to sting me for something, he didn't, and I like to think that the good guys win in the end.
Yeah, helper.
Yeah.
Mike the helper.
Yeah, and I mean, like, what would be wrong with that as a legacy? Obviously, we're all trying to sort of cling to relevance. We're all sort of running away from the impending doom of being alive. You know, no one gets out alive. We're all trying to sort of be relevant and have fun and have relationships and be admired and adored and that sort of stuff. But I think, you know, what was it? Muhammad Ali said that, you know, service to others is the rent that you pay for your room here on earth. And I kind of think, like, what could be more beautiful as a legacy than being known as somebody who was there to help people?
Fantastic, Mike. Thanks so much for your insights about business, your insights about life, and the inspiration you're going to give people by being simply a helper. Keep it simple, right?
Thanks, mate. And you're a good mentor in that regard as well. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Cheers.
Cheers.